Hello, and welcome to the fifth of several online panel discussions with foster parents that we're calling The Arena. Foster Source is partnering with the Colorado Department of Human Services to bring you this series as an opportunity to connect, share real stories, and proactively seek support. I'm your host, Renee Bernhard. I am the founder and executive director of Foster Source. At Foster Source, we serve foster families statewide with services like trauma-informed education, relief services like bunk beds, mattresses, and car seats, and therapeutic services like virtual therapy and equine labs. My husband and I were foster parents for Adams County for 3 years. We fostered 10 children and we adopted one. I am passionate about dispelling myths within child welfare and particularly about services for caregivers so that they can foster better and foster longer. I'm thrilled to be your host today. Today's discussion is called Caring for Teens and will center around common challenges foster parents face and discuss strategies for parenting this special population of kids. Let's meet our foster parents. We have Scott. He lives in Milliken and he fosters for Weld County. We have Kathy. She lives in North Glen and she fosters for Aerial Clinical Services. We have Chelsea, who lives in Fort Collins and fosters for Larimer County. And we have Andreas, who lives in Clifton and fosters for Mesa County. Welcome, everyone. Scott, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your overall experience fostering teenagers.
Sure. My wife, Amanda, and I, we have 5 sons of our own, 2 bio boys still living at home, 17 and 15. And then we have 2 sibling sets, currently brothers, 17 and 16. And then the other ones are 14 and 13. So we have 3 sibling sets living in our home, all boys. We specialize in boys, but we love it. Our youngest are coming up on teenagers, but that's about as young as we do, unless it's respite. But we love fostering teenagers. We like our sleep, so, and they do too.
Andreas, tell us a little bit about yourself and your experience fostering teens.
My name is Andres. I work with a lot of kids in the community and with a lot of teenagers, and it gave me the passion of wanting to do fostering and helping kids have a place, especially when there's not a lot of people that would like to take kids around here.
Awesome. Yeah, Kathy, how about you? Tell us a little bit about you and your experience.
So I've been doing foster care for 20 years. I've always taken teenagers and predominantly males. And I just love watching them grow. It's just been phenomenal seeing teen boys come to their own and find themselves.
I love it. Chelsea, welcome to the panel. Let's hear a little bit about you and your experience.
Hi, I'm Chelsea. My husband Robert and I have been fostering for about 13 years now. We have 4 kids of our own who are now teenagers, but they're 18, 14, 11, and 8. And then we currently have a 13-year-old foster daughter, a 1-year-old foster son, and a 3-year-old kinship placement. So we foster all ages, but in the last 13 years, we've fostered over 60 kids, and the majority of those have been teens, just because there's such a high need for foster homes for teens.
And we all know when a child first comes into our home, one of the first things we have to do is build a rapport with this child. And that's especially important with teens. Chelsea, you say there's a lot of misconceptions about teens and that building that rapport kind of depends on the teen. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, I meet a lot of the new foster parents because I help with trainings for my county and with new foster parent trainings. And a lot of people say, I can't foster teens because I have young kids and I have to foster kids younger than my own kids. And I just have to say, I don't know where that misconception comes from, but there's no research that shows that it's better to foster kids younger than your own kids. When we started, my oldest was 2. And so we've been fostering teens for my whole, as long as my kids have known. And for me, it was great when my kids were little fostering teens because the teens had different needs. My little kids were very needy physically, and I would always say the teens have different needs, with school or transportation or friends. But they don't have the diaper changes and the feeding and the bathing. So for me, having little children and then having teens was great. And my teens are often helpful with the little kids too. They'd play with them and cuddle them. And I've always found it to be great mix having fostering teens when my kids were little.
Awesome. Yeah, that's definitely an advantage to teens, right? No diapers. Andreas, you say that sometimes it's great to see teens connect with the bio children in your home. Tell us about that.
The one thing that I noticed is a lot of the kids that come to my home, because we do both too. We do the girls and boys. Um, they really connect with my daughter or my son, and they build a bond where they trust to communicate problems that are going on that we're struggling with. Um, and I and it brings a joy to my kids because they know that they're helping too. It's not just us. When we started this, it was to do it together as a family, and everybody agreed on it, and that's what made us move forward on doing fostering.
Awesome. Kathy, you say in order to build rapport with your teens, honesty is important, not sugarcoating things, and that you are big on structure. How has that worked for you?
Well, I don't want to look at the referral and look at all the things they've done in the past that have gotten them maybe in trouble or they are self-conscious about. And just say your past doesn't define you. It's what you want to do now and what you want to do in the future. And a lot of them have never had an opportunity to think about that or make choices for themselves or even set up goals for themselves. And so we just really spend a lot of time focusing on the now and where you want to be, where you want to go. I'm still doing this after 20 years, so it's working well. As far as I could tell. I think, it's so hard because all these kids kind of pull at your heartstrings and you want to just give them the world. But you have to back up sometimes and you have to be honest with yourself as well as them that, situations are hard. And sometimes I just tell them the blunt, honest truth about a situation. And they usually thank me and say they appreciate that because their whole lives they feel they've been lied to.
Scott, sometimes I think with teens, we are worried about behaviors, but you say you like to start by offering an environment of growth for your teens. You tell them right away you want good things for them. Why is that important?
Oftentimes I feel like they come to our home and they feel like they don't have a lot of hope. They've never been supported. They've never been encouraged. And so one of the first things I tell them is the sky is the limit here. Whatever you want to do, I'm going to get you to that point. And I get a little emotional because these kids sometimes, man, they're just so broken by the time they get to you. If they're 17 years old, and it's been 17 years of neglect or abuse, that's a lot of very little precious time to kind of get them to feel like that they have worth and value.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
Anytime we pull a child into our home, we want to have them be part of the family. And that means creating normalcy for him or her. And for a teen, what's normal? Using your phone and your computer. Andreas, you say when the kids go to bed, their phones have to be left on the counter. What else do you do to help create normalcy around phones and computers?
Just gotta give them the trust for them to be able to use the equipment, but let them know what they can actually look at and what they can do. Phones on the counter helps them be able to relax and get ready for bed so they're not tired when they go to school. Because if you let them have their phone, they'll be on it all night long. So we found out that it helped the kids get plenty of sleep.
Absolutely. Chelsea, you've started turning off the internet at night. Does that help you? I'm sure it helps you monitor their social media.
Well, it does, and I mean, we turn off our TVs at night too, so there's nothing on at night. The one thing sometimes with their cell phones, we use Apple phones mostly in our home, and so we use the screen time feature where you can choose to turn off the phones at night. You can choose to turn off certain apps because we've had some teens who have wanted to listen to music at night to help them sleep. So sometimes we're able to make an exception and leave their music on at night, but turn everything else off. But yes, screen time through Apple is a great way to monitor or a great way to control, I guess, social media because I can turn the social media off completely. I also find it's helpful to have a conversation with the caseworker because we've had some situations with teens where the caseworker felt that it wasn't the right time for the teens to have access to any social media. So, and sometimes we might get them access for a short period of day, a time every day, maybe an hour a day, just so they can kind of learn how to interact with social media safely. And, you know, for some kids, social media can be a big mental health trigger. So just looking at the individual needs of the teen and consulting with their caseworker or therapist and just figuring out how we can support them by limiting their access to technology or social media or whatever we need to do to help keep them safe.
Absolutely. Scott, you actually have one of your teens who pays his own phone bill. Talk about normalcy.
Right. Well, he wanted the fanciest phone there is, and he has a job, so you're going to pay for it. And we allow him to make payments to us, but we make sure it's on a deadline. That way, I mean, he's a year from being out, and so we're trying to teach him life skills. And one of a life skill, unfortunately, is that bills are due when they're due, and that's just something that happens.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, and having that kiddo pay his own phone bill really helps teach independence, which is another really
Yeah.
important skill for these teens. Andreas, you say when a teen comes into your care, you like to sit down with him or her and set some goals.
Yeah, when they come in the home, we like to make sure that all the family's there and meet whoever's coming into our home to make it more comfortable for the teen that's coming in the house. We set goals that are weekly goals, monthly goals, and until they leave, and just building a bond so they feel comfortable with what's going on in the house.
And you've helped teens who have had particular interests before. For example, if a teen is interested in being a doctor, you would help a teen look for a volunteer opportunity in that field.
Yeah, we help the kids that are interested in like whatever their goal is, what they want to be. We had kids that wanted to be a doctor or a nurse, and so we called the community hospital to see if they had any programs that they can attend. They did let the kids do volunteer work at the hospital. You know, we also had kids that were interested in wanting to work with animals, and we contacted Royce Hurst out here in Grand Junction, and they had to do some classes to get approved to do the volunteer work at the Royce Hurst to work with the animals, the cats, the birds, the dogs. But they teach them, you know, how it is, and it kind of gives them a feeling of the direction they want to go in life.
I love that. I love that. We obviously have to tell them house rules, but it's wonderful to also sit and let them be part of setting some goals. Amazing. Well done. Chelsea, tell us about teaching teens to drive.
You know, I guess it was something we never thought about when we started fostering teens. And I don't know, I guess there's all these rules these days about teens getting their permit, and often you have to have the caseworker come. But you know, back in the day, 12 years ago, I was able to take my teens to the DMV and get their permits and no problems. But I've always thought it's a good life skill, and my teens always want to drive, like every other teenager, you know, that they want to get their permit and their license and have that independence. So we just always jumped right in, and that's your goal. That's what you're working on. You want to get your permit. You want to work on getting your license. We've been there to support them in that. Our county's been great about paying for the classes. I require them to take the full, you know, driver's ed courses with the behind the wheel instruction also. So they have a little bit of knowledge before we start teaching them. And then once they have their permit, we kind of just let them drive everywhere. So if they're going to therapy or if they're going to school or wherever they're going, we let them drive so they get that kind of practice in natural settings. So by the time, a year rolls around and they have to take their license test, they usually pass it. I think as adults, it's a great skill for them to have developed when they leave the home to be able to have their license and eventually, save and buy their own car.
Absolutely. Kathy, when you're teaching independence to teens, you really like to focus on responsibility and accountability. You've helped teens open bank accounts, and you often work together with your local Chaffey program. Can you tell us a little bit about Chaffey?
Oh, sure. Uh, I love the Chaffey program because they are teaching all those independent skills that parents should be teaching all their children. And it's amazing how much I learned from the Chaffey program that sometimes we forget. These are things that kids need to know when they're going to go out on their own. So they teach about bank accounts. They teach about identity theft and fraud. They teach how to change the oil in a car. They go over healthy relationships, and they get them out communicating and how to get a job and fill out a resume or make a resume. And, so I set up high expectations with my kids with grades. I want them all to have jobs. I want them all to be involved in school. The more they have to do, the more successful they're going to be. And I think that's normalcy. And, if they have to have money. If they want to have insurance for that car, they have to have money. If they want to go on to college or they want to move out on their own. And so, I think that's just a normal family life skill. And Chaffey helps with that. And we work together to make plans for these kids so that they're going to be successful on their own.
I love it. Scott, you're a big fan of Chaffey as well. How have you worked with Chaffey?
Boy, it's awesome. Number one, they're very good about. One of our kiddos was actually employed through the Chaffey program. That's where he receives his compensation. He works for a pizza shop, and he loves it. But he's actually employed through Chaffey. They have found so many resources that I had no idea were even available, and they've been a big support for these boys. And I look forward to working with them with our younger set of boys too. They've just been rock stars, building life skills, getting these kids to a place where we mentor them, and they also have other people do the same thing, bringing them up to a point of success. With our kiddos, we'll give them cash and turn them loose on a store. We're like, okay, now you're going to buy your own clothes. Here's your budget. What are you going to come back with? And and so it's funny seeing some of them be very frugal, and other ones like, I got one thing and it was $300, and I'm like, okay, well, hopefully you like those jeans because that is your jeans now. So, but it's fun.
You now have jeans,
right? They need to learn, and so if no one's teaching them, how are they going to learn? They're just going to be dumped into society just with no knowledge of any of these things. So it's good.
The Chaffey program sounds amazing. I know they also help with college and FAFSA. Scott, you help kids decide, are they college bound or should they go to trade school?
The future looks different for every person, every child, for sure. So college per se, like a university, is not necessarily the path for every kid, and that's okay. We have resources in our community for trade schools or some major businesses like electrician and plumbing that they've agreed that whatever kiddos I send them, they'd be willing to put them into apprenticeship programs when they're out on their own and get them and going towards a successful career rather than just a dead-end job going from one to the next. And so, but there is funding for children that have been in foster care for schooling. And so we haven't gotten to the point of needing that yet, but we know that it's there, and we've started some of the research for applying for those. We've only been fostering for a couple of years, so we haven't needed it yet. Our oldest child is 17, and Yeah, it's coming up. So, and we want to prepare just like our own kids. And it actually, you know what? What's wonderful about it is because our bio kids that are still in the home are 17 and 16. It's just natural that we're doing all this research anyway for schools and trade schools and colleges. So it just goes hand in hand.
Kathy, tell us about taking teens to tour colleges.
I feel it's really important that they get out there and look at the environment that they think they want to be in. Because sometimes they think they want to go to a big university and college. And then when we walk around the campus and they see how far they have to walk to class or how many kids are going to be in a classroom, they realize maybe a small college isn't such a bad idea. Or a trade school might even be better for some of them. So, yeah, I think touring colleges is super important. Sometimes even when we're on vacation, if we're in another state, we might stop by a college and just visit it just to get an idea of that environment. I make my 14 and 15-year-olds go with my 17 and 18-year-olds when we go to tour a college because I feel like they need to start at that age to see what the options are out there. I also encourage them to start in high school. There's a technical school in our district, and I think a lot of the districts have those now, where you can take vocational classes or go to a technical school in high school and earn college credits along the way. And so I really encourage all my kids to try that. Even if it's something that they don't think they're going to do in the future, I'm like, well, take that construction class. Then you can fix up your own home, even if you don't use it as a skill in the future as a degree or, some kind of job that you want. Just get those skills because everybody can use those skills. There's no problem knowing how to weld something together because you might need to do that in life. So I just really encourage them to look at that college piece or that educational piece beyond high school.
Well, we've talked about all things teens so far, but there's one topic we haven't covered: dating and sex. Chelsea, you say it's important to be honest and upfront with teens coming into your home. Tell us what you do to talk about staying safe and using birth control.
Yes, I think as you know, as a teen's foster parent, you're their parent, and you have that responsibility to have those hard conversations. And so, for my girls, that means taking them to their doctor or Planned Parenthood to have access to have a conversation about birth control and is birth control the right option for them? What kinds of birth control are there? And just letting a professional have those conversations with them and giving them access to those resources. And then for my boys and my girls alike, just having conversations about safety and safe sex or safety when dating, and with my own bio kids too, just understanding, if they are dating, who are they going out with, who's driving, where are they going to be, when are they going to be back, just all those safety things. And, I make sure I meet the person and, I like parent supervision. Are there going to be parents around? Are you going to be out in the community with a group of friends? But I want to make sure that these kids are putting themselves in safe situations. And we've always had issues. These kids with their trauma, if they're looking for trouble, they'll find it. But we want to make sure that they have all the support and resources they need and do our best to provide them with that structure to keep them safe.
Absolutely. Scott, when one of your teen boys is interested in someone, you like to have them bring him or her around to the family and join the family or hang out in public spaces. Tell us a little bit about your plans.
Malls do still exist, at least in Greeley. So we use that as a resource. It's you can kind of keep a side eye on them without being overbearing, and they still get to do their thing until they build some trust up. And then that's another thing too, just how my wife and I interact. Oftentimes they haven't seen healthy relationships displayed in front of them. And so we certainly try to portray that in our home and in public. And then we encourage them to be, since we specialize in boys mostly, we do encourage them to be gentlemen, not to objectify women, and to treat everyone with respect. It's something that they're not. It's actually pretty cool to watch these boys show up at a door with flowers and chocolate. It's completely gentlemanly, and the girls are actually that they show up on their doorstep. They're like in awe. Like, I didn't ever expect this to happen. So
That's
it's
awesome.
beautiful. Yeah.
Yes, well done, Dad. Great training there. Andreas, I love what you do with your teens. Tell us about what they can do if they feel unsafe in a situation. What have you told them?
When they feel unsafe in a situation, we always got a sign that they can call us up, and it's usually about a food or something. Hey, are we gonna have spaghetti tomorrow? And that's usually a sign for me to call them back up, say, hey, it's time for you to get home and get home now. There's sometimes the kids want you to be more so where their friends are hearing what you're telling them, and and then we just stop doing what we're doing and we go pick them up and we bring them home, or they end up coming home. There were situations that kids were going to go to a college party and they didn't want to go because they know there's going to be problems. There was times that they were with their friends and they were going to go smoke and they didn't want to be around that. So they're like, hey, it's time to go. And they were calling. They give us a sign where it's like, okay, then we go pick them up.
Brilliant. So they can kind of talk in code and still seem cool to their friends, but stay safe. That's a brilliant plan. Thank you all for being on the panel today. To close out, I'd like to hear from each of you. Why should foster parents consider taking a teen? Chelsea?
So, in my opinion, if foster parents are really, if they're fostering to help kids, teens are the ones who really need their help. We talked about all the years of trauma they have, and there's such a high need for homes for teens all the time. I know in my county we have 30 homes, over 30 homes with openings for younger kids. We almost never have homes with openings for teens. So our teens, we don't have an opening currently, but I help out with a lot of respite or emergency placements for teens. And it's hard so that when these kids aren't able to stay within their county because of a lack of homes, they're not near their families, they're not near their friends, they often have to change schools. So these teens have so much trauma already. And because we have such a shortage of homes for teens, they're shuffled all over the state. And I guess what I would encourage is if you already are a foster parent, or if you're thinking of becoming a foster parent, I would encourage you to try teenagers. Start with respite, to take a week or take 2 weeks or a weekend, or try emergency foster care. For me, once I get to know the teenagers, they're amazing. They're these great kids who just need someone to care about them. And so I would say get to know the teenagers in foster care because they really need you. And I think once you get to know them, you'll come to love them and really, have that place in your heart for teenagers like we all do.
Love it. Scott, what would you tell a foster parent considering a teen?
You might be the last line in these kids' childhood before they move on to adulthood that shows that there's trustworthy people in this world and that they can trust people. If they go into their adulthood just thinking that they can't trust anyone, it's so scary. The world is a scary place. And, Chelsea said earlier that if they're looking for trouble, they can find it. I have found that I have to remind myself daily to show these kids grace.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, they're going to find trouble. But if you just cast them away, that's what they're used to. And so it's important to remember to show these kids grace and show them trust. Show them that there are trustworthy people that they can call on when they're in trouble.
Andreas, what would you say to a foster parent considering taking a teen?
Yeah, hey, open your doors. If you want to be a foster parent, open your doors and let them in. The greatest feeling to have once you get to know the kid and build that trust and bond with them is that they become family.
Kathy, what would you tell a foster parent who is interested in taking a teen?
There's a lot of things. But I have to say, my favorite is aha moments when they figure out something that they didn't realize they could do. And all of a sudden that light bulb goes on and they're like, oh my goodness, I didn't know I could do this or that. And they get super excited. And you kind of, as their parent, get excited as well. I get extremely emotional at graduation because we all know, like, it's hard for teenagers in general, and they struggle in adult life if they don't have a home. And so fostering is extremely important for these kids because we know statistically that a lot of them won't graduate. And so if you can bring them into your home, eliminate some of that trauma and give them, that encouragement they need, and they can graduate, that is like one of the most precious gifts we can give to them moving forward in their life. And I also enjoy them coming back. Like you said, they become family. Yeah. And when you can see them come back with their girlfriends, their wives, their children, and they have learned and they become successful now as adults, and they've broken that pattern that might have caused a lot of their trauma in life, and they've been a successful, adult. It's just wonderful to see that. And there's nothing more precious in life than feeling that these children have accomplished things for themselves. And so I just think taking teens into your home is a wonderful way to show them that love they need to be successful themselves.
Thank you all so much for being on the panel today. If you're thinking about being a foster parent, the first step is to attend an informational meeting at your local county or child placement agency. You can find all of the information about upcoming meetings at coforkids.org. Not quite sure if you're ready to foster? There's still lots of ways to get involved. You can be a CASA, a court-appointed special advocate. You could be a neighbor with our friends at Families Together, or you could support other foster care nonprofits in your area, like Foster Source, the Colorado State Foster Parent Association, Families Together, and Fostering Great Ideas. All of the information regarding those agencies is also listed at coforkids.org. Join us next time. See you then.